What I hear in the wind. Cries of anguish. Children being taken from their mothers, men coming home to find their doors unlatched.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. House of the Dragon Season 2 has featured a bunch of crazy weirwood visions Daemon's been having this whole time. Some of the spiciest visions we've seen any of the characters have on Game of Thrones. On screen, that is. If you include Helaena and Bran, they've technically seen way more, way crazier stuff because of the way Dragon Dreams and Bran's Three-Eyed Raven Greenseer powers work. But there are a couple important things going on in Daemon's visions and a couple important reasons why they're happening and why Alice Rivers is so important to the story. It's all meant to connect back to the prophecy of the Long Night, the White Walkers, everything that happens later during the events of the Game of Thrones main series. So we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. Just starting with all the craziest stuff first, everyone asking why Daemon would totally cross the Targaryens' line when it comes to sister-wiving by getting it on with his mother. Like, if he thought it couldn't get crazier within their family, he just took it a step further. He's been having trippy, weirwood visions in every episode since he came to Harrenhal, but they seem like they're getting wilder and wilder with each new episode that he stays there. Like, Alice Rivers has had him guzzling Shade of the Evening every night, sleeping in that weirwood bed. The one that most people are talking about is after episode 5, he found himself getting it on with his mother, Alyssa Targaryen, which is a cool bit of history too because they've actually never depicted her on screen this way. The reason why she looks so young is because she died shortly after giving birth to her third son, also named Aegon. Remember, big joke here, everybody in the Targaryen family loved naming their children Aegon. She never fully recovered from the birth, died within a year, and then the baby Aegon died 6 months after she did, leaving only Balon the Brave, her husband, Viserys, and Daemon. Although recently we just met Ulf White, who said that he was the bastard son of Balon the Brave. Based on his age, it's possible after Alyssa's death, Balon in his grief slept with another woman and that union produced Ulf White. Most of the books portray Balon and Alyssa's relationship is very loving and passionate, and Balon himself was thought to be a very honorable person. So I think it's unlikely that he cheated on her while she was still alive. Hopefully the show will dig deeper into that in future episodes. We might even see people on the show claim to be bastards of Maegor the Cruel's line and a bunch of other famous Targaryens in history. But the showrunner said the main reason for this particular vision of Daemon with his mother, why it was so spicy, was because Daemon was meant to be hallucinating the only woman in his life who ever gave him all the power he ever wanted unabashedly, with no strings attached. Like the only woman he felt like gave him everything he could ever want. Which makes sense. Most people in Game of Thrones are low-grade obsessed with their mothers in some way. Daemon's no different, especially given the way that Alyssa died when he was so young he never got the chance to know her as a child. So of course he'd be low-grade stuck on the idea of her his whole life. It was the same thing with Jon Snow, obsessed with who his mother was until he learned the truth that it was Lyanna Stark. Every boy in Game of Thrones has a mommy complex. It's just worse inside the Targaryen family because of the way they do all this sister-wiving, getting on with other members of the family. So that's why during Daemon's visions, his weirwood vision mother is whispering to him all the things he's obsessed with now. The Iron Throne, the crown, how he was her favorite son, the best son, made to rule. Too bad he was born the second son. If you remember back during season 1, Viserys even joked about this when they were just having fun.
I will not revisit this debate. You were always mother's favorite. Our mother, she had no regard for custom or tradition, rules. And I, sadly, was no great warrior.
So it kind of did sound like Alyssa really did think of him as her favorite son. Daemon also recently had this argument with Rhaenyra about how he felt slighted that Viserys never took him seriously as an heir and thought that he was a weak king, and it always should have been him. Kind of the same vibe from Aemond and Aegon, where Aemond thought that it should have been him. But while these crazy weirwood visions are happening, you also have Alice Rivers actively being involved in the visions themselves. There's been a lot of questions about this since the show introduced her character. The books don't really go into great detail about her. She's just referred to as the Witch of Harrenhal, and she's depicted as having a relationship with Aemond. The show's obviously expanded her character quite a bit. She's meant to be a woods witch from the Riverlands, descended from the First Men.
I'm no woman at all. I'm a barn owl. Cursed to live in human form.
So when she tells Daemon that she's not a woman, she's an owl trapped in human form, it's possible that she is a warg and even a greenseer because of the way the visions are going down here. Now, wargs are very rare in Game of Thrones, but greenseers themselves are like a tiny percentage of wargs, so it's like a tiny percent of people. Like you might have a handful of wargs during every generation, but only like 1 or 2 green seers across the timeline. For example, the three-eyed raven, real name Brynden Rivers, also a bastard from the Riverlands, was a green seer just like Bran. He'll be born about 44 years after the events of House of the Dragon right now. Here's where we tie back into the White Walkers, the prophecy, the Long Night, the Night King. So the three-eyed raven's mother was someone named Melissa Blackwood. Remember, we've been dealing with the Blackwoods on the show right now. She was born about 25 years after House of the Dragon. In this scene with Daemon and Willem Blackwood, Raventree Hall is basically their castle. That's what's up behind them here, like they're sitting right in front of Raventree Hall. The Blackwoods are kind of the bane of his existence right now, committing all these atrocities in his name. He told them to pull another blood and cheese on the Brackens. What the show might be doing, and this isn't in the books, but the show's been adding all kinds of stuff that wasn't originally in the books, is saying that Melissa Blackwood descends from Alice Rivers' line because in the books, Alice Rivers becomes pregnant, depicted with Aemond here, but it's not really clear who the father of her baby is in reality, so the show might just be causing you to wonder if it's Aemond's baby or Daemon's baby. To be clear though, what I'm saying is that Alice Rivers might be the grandmother of Melissa Blackwood, but her line eventually produces the three-eyed raven. The way the actress has talked about Alice Rivers, she's playing her as if she's hundreds of years old, kind of like Melisandre is hundreds of years old during the events of Game of Thrones, just pretending to look younger. A lot of people also think that she's a green seer because she knew exactly what Daemon was seeing inside his visions, as if she herself was causing him to see specific things, putting those visions specifically in his head. Only a green seer would be able to do that, like the three-eyed raven does that to Bran. They'd also need to use the weirwoods to do it. Daemon has literally been sleeping in a weirwood bed every night, which she made fun of.
Harrenhal's been cursed since its first stone was laid.
Black hadn't felled the grove of weirwood trees that grew on these lands. It's said their whispers can still be heard sometimes.
A midwife's tale.
Like heart trees imbued with the spirits of those who lived long before he came.
Harrenhal itself was built on a weirwood forest Harrenhal cut down. It would be like building your castle on a cursed burial ground, pet cemetery stuff. Like, where's the most magical and cursed place we could put our castle and just stay every night? That's also why the weirwood roots have started to grow throughout the castle. It's like they're reclaiming the forest from the castle. And to boot, it's right next to the God's Eye, the Isle of Faces, probably one of the most powerful places in Westeros for the old gods and the children of the forest. For example, the God's Eye is where the Children of the Forest used the Hammer of Waters during their initial war with the First Men to smash the Arm of Dorne, and it's possible that this is also the place where they created the Night King. We saw that vision during Game of Thrones, the flashback the three-eyed raven showed to Bran. They traveled to the past to watch the creation around this Stonehenge formation. Maybe we'll see a version of this later on the House of the Dragon series. We've only seen the God's Eye from a distance from the Harrenhal visions here in the trailers. And if it wasn't clear, because I get questions about this all the time when we're talking about the Night King himself was a First Man from during the war with the First Men. Alice Rivers seems like a present day. She's been orchestrating Daemon's visions, sort of playing him like a fiddle, watching him closely, counseling him, trying to teach him to learn about himself, become a better person. The next question is obviously why? What is her purpose? And I think the idea, if she really is a green seer, she's also seen the Night King using her green seer powers. Like she's seen everything that Bran eventually winds up seeing. So she probably knows about the White Walkers, the threat of the next long night, in her own way. Like even though she probably didn't see Aegon's dragon dream, she saw her own version of that because of her green seer powers. So she might be responsible for creating the line that eventually produces the three-eyed raven in the Riverlands here. Brynden Rivers eventually coming along in the timeline a little bit later. But I think the show is also playing with the idea that it could either be Daemon or Aemond that helps produce that line. Probably why she seems like she cares so much about Daemon right now. It's not out of the goodness of her heart. It's because she needs something special from him and she needs him to do something. And it's all sort of born from this idea in the Fire and Blood book that speaks of Alice Rivers only being a lover of Aemon, but the show's taken this stance that the maester who wrote the book didn't have everything correct, didn't know about all the secret conversations that people had behind the scenes, wouldn't have known about the conversations between Alice Rivers and Daemon here. So that's why I say the show might just be playing with the idea that Alice Rivers' baby is Daemon's. She's not just doing this trying to give him a pep talk for the sake of turning him around on being a dirtbag out of the goodness of her heart. She has her own master plan that ties back into the prophecy of the Long Night, the White Walkers, everything that's coming later in the timeline because she's seen it. But also on top of that, all of Daemon's visions that she seems like she's sending to him are done so with the purposes of forcing him to reckon with all of his past misdeeds, his own selfishness, his obsession with the Iron Throne mostly. So a theoretical child with Daemon, or even Aemond, it would work either way. Producing the Three-Eyed Raven might just be a contingency plan so that even if Daemon does die, or Aemond does die, the other side, so to speak, like the side of humans in general in Westeros, still gain the Three-Eyed Raven. Because right now at the moment on House of the Dragon, the Targaryens have so many dragons that it'd be more than enough to defeat the Night King, the White Walkers, if they all worked together and stayed the course, which of course they're not going to do. The whole point of Game of Thrones, just in general, that the original show tried to make is how people are kind of terrible through every age. Like, people are often worse to each other or just as bad as the White Walkers themselves. The real villains weren't the White Walkers this whole time. It was actually the people themselves that were the villains. It's sort of like the Game of Thrones version of the Thanos was right meme. Just in general, the Dance of the Dragons winds up becoming such a catastrophic event in the history of the Targaryen family and the realm itself. It becomes a huge self-own for the side of good in the cycle of long nights, like they shot themselves in the wing, so to speak, to make as many dragon puns as possible. Gave away their massive advantage. It'd be like them just throwing away all their nuclear weapons. All because people are just so dumb and selfish and caught up with the day-to-day. In the episode 6 trailer, it seems like Daemon's spirits are lifting, so it's possible that he does find a solution to his current problem with the River Lords thanks to the help of Alys Rivers, Daemon getting his groove back, so maybe he turns things around a little bit. There's also a totally different way that we know that the Three-Eyed Raven comes from Daemon's line, ultimately. Because the Three-Eyed Raven, Brynden Rivers, is the bastard son of Aegon IV and Melissa Blackwood. Aegon IV, who eventually does sit on the Iron Throne, comes from Daemon's line. So even if Daemon isn't the father of Alys Rivers' eventual child, he still winds up being one of the ancestors of the Three-Eyed Raven. And really cool side detail too, because we know we're going to be getting the Dunk and Egg series, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, episodes for that will probably release next year. We could actually see Brynden Rivers before he becomes the Three-Eyed Raven during that, because he was very active in the realm before he became the Three-Eyed Raven. Just like Daemon, great-grandpapa Bless, he committed himself all kinds of war crimes. Cannot wait to see some of those in the future of the timeline. But let me know in the comments, why do you think that Alys Rivers is specifically so obsessed with Daemon? It just feels like he's part of some grand plan, some master plan that she has, and it involves the Three-Eyed Raven eventually. Because the Three-Eyed Raven comes from House Blackwood, Daemon is so obsessed with House Blackwood right now, and Alys Rivers is from the Riverlands and is so obsessed with Daemon. It just seems like the show is trying to connect all those dots for the purposes of tying this back into the big thread across the timeline of the White Walkers themselves. There's a bunch of stuff coming up. I'm working on a couple other big bonus videos. My full episode 6 video will post on Sunday after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Everybody click here for my episode 6 video, and click here for all my other House of the Dragon episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.